There's a new super team potentially forming in the CDL. This news dropped just a couple hours ago on Twitter. Absolutely blew up the TL. I just did about a 2.5-hour stream talking about this live, but gotta make a video, talk about this, as well as some of the other rumors that just came out, and then, of course, update our Rostermania predictions tracker. First things first, we obviously gotta talk about this team. HYDRA, ENVOY, Scrap, and GHOSTY are exploring a super team, a potential super team, on 100 Thieves. What Breaking Point tweeted here is HYDRA and Scrap want to team up. The budget for 100 super team would be challenging and require multiple buyouts, and other deals can still happen. And they also made sure to preface down here, keyword is exploring. This team would be obviously worth signing, of course, but the budget would be challenging, making this deal less likely. So first things first, obviously, this deal is going to be on the unlikely side of things. We know Thieves cut back their budget this past season. Can they afford this team? Probably. Is it a smart idea for them to spend a crap ton of cash to make this team happen, which they likely won't make their money back on this roster? Probably not. So it's going to matter, how much they cost analysis this to see what the pros and cons are of spending this much money on a team. Buying out HYDRA, buying out Scrap, buying out ENVOY, and then obviously you still have Dan GHOSTY under contract, is going to cost a lot of money. Then on top of that, you got to pay the contracts for those players once you buy them out. The players will likely have to take pay cuts to play together. It's something we've seen. The FAZE boys took a pay cut to play with draws this past season. It makes sense, especially when you're likely to be top 3 competing for every event. You're going to get prize money to make up for the salary you might have passed up on. But I think it's important to note right off the beginning, me, even as a Thieves fan who would love for this to happen, I know this is very unlikely. I know this is just a potential thing that could happen, but this is not confirmed. This is just a rumor. But now to say, especially as a Thieves fan and a fan of Call of Duty, this team would be disgusting, bro. This team would be so good. Easily a top 3 team on paper, right up there with OPTIC and FAZE. I mean, you have 2 of the best slayers, honestly, probably the 2 best slayers in the game in HYDRA and Scrap on the same team. And then, like I've said in previous videos, you put the right role players around them, and this team, these 2 players would just do all the slaying work. You bring an ENVOY, a dirty work sub, who will hit the routes, who will sit in the hill, he will carry your bomb and search and destroy, he will get in the control point. Absolutely, honestly, I think perfect player for this team on paper in terms of playstyle. Then you have Dan GHOSTY, a guy who, in his own right, is an up-and-coming superstar, nasty gunny, but also great comms, good leadership, amazing awareness of what's happening in the map. This team, just on paper, in terms of the roles and what they're capable of, I think is honestly potentially like the perfect best roster you could build right now. Before we head over to the tracker, let's look at a couple other things that also came out after this. This source here from CDL Scrim Intel says that if Kremp and Nasty leave LAT, a move to Vancouver to team with 04 and Abuza would be most likely. Definitely interesting. I think 04 and Abuza is a duo a lot of teams would want to play with. I think Kremp and Nasty both are players that should get on a team this year, so this is something to remember. And then the other thing here is Boston is likely to be sticking with their EWC roster. I don't know if this is the best option for them, but to be fair to them, this was the only time they won on LAN this year. They got a top 8 at EWC, so it was the best version of the Boston roster we saw all year. And we obviously know the financial struggles and things that's been happening behind the scenes with Boston. Likely not going to be throwing out big contracts, so this roster sticking together does make sense. I don't know if it's the best option, like I said, but it does make sense. But now let's head over to the tracker. This is what I had in my last video, so I'm going to clean this up real quick. So given what we know right now, based on rumors and speculation, and obviously some confirmations and things like that, this is kind of what I think we're looking at with the league currently. Let me put my camera back on the screen. I'm going to move myself over here over these teams. Miami, we still don't know what their 4 is going to be. We obviously know there's 5 players under the roster, but the rumor is it's going to be Vickle out. We'll see if he stays on as a sub. And obviously the LAT team you see right now, I mean, I could just give those boys a kiss right there. I mean, that's a fucking dream roster right there. Shout out to obviously the other guys who played for LAT this year. It does suck to see them go, but that roster that my face cam is now currently covering is disgusting. So we're going to put them together here. For Seattle Surge, I put the Kremp and Nasty team in here. So it would be 04, Kremp, Nasty, and Abuza. Honestly, a pretty decent team. I don't know that this is the best roster that Seattle Surge could build, but this is the rumor that we're going to go with for now. And then, of course, I had the Boston Breach in here. This is the team that played at EWC for the Breach. So, interesting roster, right? Interesting roster, but I'm not going to be too quick to judge. You never know what could happen. But now it's where it gets fun, right? Because if these are the dominoes that end up falling, if HYDRA and Scrap and ENVOY end up on Thieves, it leaves us with a lot of possibilities here. And I think C9 and Ultra would be the next up to kind of figure out what they're going to do with these remaining players. I think for both of these teams, it would be interesting, right? I don't know who you keep, who you build around. Do you keep anybody if you're Ultra? Do you keep anybody if you're C9? But obviously this is just predictions and having fun with it. So I'm just going to go with a hypothetical situation I can build out. So kicking it off, I actually think I did semi this in one of my recent videos. In a lot of my past videos, I've been putting insight on the Minnesota Rocker. I think this is possible. I think they need a main AR on this team, right? Cobra's a flex, Linz is an SMG. I think they need a main AR, so this is possible. But now with everything that's transpired, I almost think both of these two to Minnesota Rocker would be pretty interesting. I don't know what buyouts and any of that looks like because I have no idea what the behind the scenes economic side of the esport looks like. Insight and Kleenex staying together as a duo makes sense. Going into a duo of French players, so this would be a EU duo or EU squad over here on the Minnesota Rocker. Kleenex is your bang out entry SMG. Linz is more of a slaying SMG. Honestly, I think role-wise, on paper, this team looks pretty good. I also think there's the possibility that maybe Insight and Kleenex just stay on Ultra and they rebuild around them. But for the sake of the fun of it, we're going to rebuild Ultra from the ground up like we've done many times before. And then for C9, I don't know where these players would go, so I'm kind of just going to keep them, and we're going to get two different players here for C9. For the Toronto Ultra, I think there's two different ways they can go about it. One, they can use money they're going to get from buyouts for their entire roster that it looks like in at least our hypothetical they're getting rid of, and use that money to bring in some decent players to still be a competitive team, or they can go full on rebuild and go young. This time around, I'm going to go, they try to build a somewhat competitive team. So for them, I'm going to start out by giving them Sib. I think Sib is the next to best available player. He could maybe go to Ravens to play with Gwyn, but in this hypothetical, we're going to throw him on Ultra. Then to build out, I'm honestly going to build this Ultra team as if they're trying to build the best possible team they can. Next up, I'm going to give him Attach. I think Attach running your main AR, Sib on your flex. Honestly, a pretty good best of the rest ARs that are available right now. Probably the best duo you could put together given who is in my free agent category at the bottom. Then we need some SMGs here to pair alongside this AR duo. First up, I'm going to give him Nero. I think Nero and Attach maybe are a duo that could want to stick together. I think Nero was their best player on Legion this past year. I think Attach was the second best player. So I think this makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think Nero is a very high upside, high potential type of entry SMG that would definitely help Ultra continue to maybe be contenders or at least top 4 contenders to some capacity. And then they need a second SMG to pair alongside here. They could dip into challengers potentially and try to get someone from down there, maybe that they feel is a good fit here. Looking at who's available and who had a really good season this past year, I'm throwing in that guy, TJ Halley. I think Tej honestly had a pretty solid season for the Ravens. And I think him and Nero could be an interesting duo, right? Nero's very fast, very aggressive. Tej, I don't think is as fast and aggressive as him, but I think Tej still has a lot of potential and upside in him. And honestly, just given who's available at the bottom of this board right here, I think this is a team that Ultra could build that could potentially compete. Now, I actually want to look at the Royal Ravens because I got an interesting thing here to start it off. Sub duo here for Gwyn. I'm going Joe Deceives. I think Joe Deceives definitely should end up on a roster. I think these guys are pretty good friends. I feel like they play together on stream. I know like Joe, Dan Ghosty, and Gwyn are like all friends. So I think I could see Joe Deceives coming out over here to be a sub duo with Gwyn. But then you need some ARs. First up, I'm going to go Geo. I think he's just a straight up slaying second AR, flex AR, whatever you want to call it. And I think he could fit pretty good on this team, especially if they're going with this like younger sort of roster, as you can clearly see I'm doing on screen. And then lastly, there's two ways they could go about it. I think for one, they could just continue to go with this young route and just sort of build a full young team. Or they could go with a veteran. A lot of people like to say in my comments, like, there's no veteran leadership on a team. Like, this team's not going to work. Like, maybe in some cases that's true, but like LA Thieves were the youngest team in the league this past season, and we saw what happened towards the end of the year. So I don't think having a young team is necessarily a bad thing. I actually think in some cases it could be the better option, but potentially maybe a team here or a player that could work well on this team maybe is Slasher. I don't know if Slasher wants to team with these young rosters anymore. But I really think Slasher is a main AR who still should have a shot in the league. I still am a believer in Slasher. And just looking at who else is available, I mean, I don't know if Beans comes back to that team. And just looking at some of the other ARs in here, like RCDs and Clay and like Diamond Con maybe, or Brack or Fellow or Accuracy or Flames maybe. I'm just going to throw Slasher in there. I honestly think he might be the best option for main ARs that I have down here, unless I'm overlooking somebody. Now to do C9, because obviously LAG are going to be last. I mean, they're always last every offseason. They wait till the very last second to sign players, because they don't want to pay contracts unless they really have to. So for C9, who do they put alongside Skies and Kismet? Honestly, is a question I wish I had an answer for. There's so many players that I think are pretty much deserving to be in the league, but there's only 6 spots available at this point on my spreadsheet. I would imagine C9 probably want to compete, right? Like, I would imagine they want to build a team that can be competitive in the league. I'm going to go Illy first. We're going to say all things considered, Illy is all good, right? There's no behind the scenes issues, whatever the case may be. I don't know anything. But we're going to go Illy. I think Illy might be one of the better free agents available, as like I said, as long as everything behind the scenes is good and teams are willing to sign Illy. And I think him playing in front of Skies as your faster AR makes a lot of sense, at least just on paper. And Illy's also a great SND player, which is what New York has historically always had, is pretty good SND players. But then we need an SMG to pair alongside Kismet. There's options down here. We could give Mac a shot. I personally just don't think Mac gets right back into the league after not playing at all last year. There's Estriel is hidden back here. I can move him just so you can see him. Maybe he's an option. There's Vivid, there's Hixie, there's Johnny, there's Fame, Standy, Hook. Like, maybe Hook comes in here and they do a little reunite here between these two. These two have obviously played together a bunch. Maybe there's an option here for these two to reunite once again on this C9 team. But to be honest, I don't think this team is that great, at least on paper. But we're just going to run with it because I really don't know what to put. So what would you build for C9? Definitely let me know in the comments. But not least, we got to pick up the scraps and put them here on LAG. I'm going to start off with Estriel. I think maybe he comes back here. I think Estriel had a good rookie season and definitely should get on another team. There's so many players down here that should be on a team, so I apologize if I leave someone out that maybe you really think should be on a roster. Next up, I'm going to put in Beans. I think Beans is a player that has high upside and has potential. And I don't know, we'll throw him on LAG. Then another SMG who honestly I think is definitely good enough to be in a league and I think was good when he was on a team is Johnny. So I'm going to throw him in there. And then to round it out, honestly, I'm just going to put in DiamondCon. Maybe DiamondCon and Estriel still want to play together. They played together twice this year, right? Obviously on LAG and then on G2 at Esports World Cup, aka the Rocker. It is just a mishmash team, bro. Don't take the LAG team too serious. As you can see on screen, these are the teams that updated my predictions based on the Rostermania news that has come out recently. Let me know what you think about not only these rosters, but the rumors for LA Thieves, maybe for Boston Breach, or even for the Seattle Surge. Personally, for me, I think some of these rosters actually look pretty good. This LAT team is an absolute dream, bro. Like, I mean, dude, if we get this team on LAT, I'm going to be insufferable this season. No, I'm just joking. I won't be that bad. But I'm going to be very excited, and I would love to watch this team play for my org. So you guys let me know what you think about all this stuff. Make sure to sub if you haven't already for more CDL content. I appreciate the support on all the videos and everything recently, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.